Hello, and welcome to another episode of Cultural Experience Pioneers podcast. This series is dedicated to exploring the latest innovations for professionals in cultural attractions, whether from museums, heritage sites, or travel attractions. This series is for you. I'm Shachar Grambek, and I'll be your host today. Today, we're thrilled to have Danique with us, scholar, innovator, integrating technology with cultural heritage and working for the Centraal Museum in Netherlands. Danique, it's wonderful to have you here.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be part of this podcast.
Thank you. And I'm curious to hear more about your journey. Can you share a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, of course. So I'm Danique. I'm 24 years old and I'm from Utrecht, Netherlands. As you said, I work at Centraal Museum in Utrecht right now, but before I worked at Nemo Science Museum. And I'm also a creative business student and I'm working on my thesis right now.
Very well. Good for you. Sounds amazing. Um, I read a little bit before our conversation. I read a bit about a project that you did of scavenger hunt at the Night Museum event. Um, can you share a little bit about this project?
Yeah, of course. So when I was working at Nemo, they host this yearly event called Night at the Museum. And it's kind of an event for teachers in the Netherlands to become acquainted with Nemo. And because Nemo also, besides being a museum, they also offer school materials and excursions for schools and etc. Um, and I was part of being, I was an intern actually, and they were looking for things to put in the program. And that's when I came up with doing an AR scavenger hunt. So AR meaning augmented reality. Um, and the aim was to connect teachers with the school materials directly. So when they participated in the AR scavenger hunt, they would scan these markers in the museum. So they were in the museum using exhibitions that already existed, but the link already connected them to the school materials, if that makes sense, to the AR.
Nice, very innovative. What was the reason that first place you came with this idea? Or if I rephrase the question, why do you think that museums should be involved in such digital experiences?
Um, well, if we look at the AR, I think AR is a big part of our daily life, using Snapchat filters, Instagram stories, and enhancing them with some stuff, the dog ears and stuff like that. So I wanted to do something with what people are already familiar with, and the main goal was to let teachers use the school materials. And what I was afraid of is that if you just gave them a flyer with, okay, here are school materials, they would just like put it in the bag and forget about it. Whereas with the AR, it was a direct link. So they used their phone, they scanned an exhibition, and they got a link. Okay, so you like this exhibition about human anatomy. Here are 3 cool lessons that you can do in your class next week. Um, and I feel like that's a much more direct approach. It's already in your inbox. We have it all ready for you. And I think it's important for museums to use that, to leverage that, because it's something that every company is doing. And in a way, museum is a company as well. Um, and you don't want to be behind, and you want to attract people that are using that technology. So the new generation, Gen Z, everything is about tech these days, whether we want to or not. And I feel like museums should leverage it as well.
Yeah, definitely. I believe there is some shift in the market in the last couple of years, both the digital experiences and also the fact that we have our mobile phones. So it provides us another, and for the museums, another mean to get in touch and engage with the users that are coming to visit in the museum. Um, can you share a bit about the reactions that you got from the visitors? I mean, were there any experiences that that were more engaging, others that were less successful?
Yeah, so after the event, we sent out a survey to everyone who attended. And the survey was kind of general, so it wasn't about the AR experience itself, but it was about every aspect of the event. And I was in charge of analyzing the data. And funnily enough, a lot of people said that their favorite part was the AR scavenger hunt, and I was very happy because it also gave them something to do. It was meant to do as a group. So groups of 3 or 4, maybe even 5. And you know, when people go to an event, maybe they go alone, maybe they go with 1 or 2 colleagues. It's good to have something that connects people. That it's kind of like an icebreaker activity. So you only need 1 phone, and you can just go across all these exhibitions. Of course, some exhibitions were more hidden than others. That was the purpose of being a scavenger hunt, that you really had to go look for it. But in the statistics of the markers being scanned, you could really see that the exhibitions that were more on front were scanned more often, which makes sense because yeah, it's more easy to find. We also had a prize at the end. So if you completed an exercise or an activity, you could get a letter, and all the letters ended up being a word, and you could send it in the word and you could win a prize. So I think that's also kind of a motivator as well, to have something tangible, to be able to win something. In this case, it was a lesson box filled with like games and stuff. It was really fun, actually. It was a really good prize. I think that motivated as well as being able to do something with your colleagues, something fun on a night out, and not just having to be there to, you know, I think a lot of people, young people, find it kind of awkward to be in a museum and just walk around and, you know, like, what do I do with my hands? How do I, you know, what am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to act? I don't know. And this gave them something to do and kind of like feel comfortable being there.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned the fact that you used some gamification elements, and what would you recommend professionals to consider, and why to consider those gamification elements, and what type of elements work for you?
Okay, so when it comes to gamification, I kind of looked at things people are already comfortable with versus pushing people a little bit out of their comfort zone. Kind of a mix between that, because if you go too far and you make it too complicated, people are going to, you know, kind of abstain from doing it. At least I think so. Maybe that's an assumption. So for example, a scavenger hunt is something everyone did as a kid. At least I hope so. I think in Netherlands that's the case. So that was part of the game, being a scavenger hunt. So we had on the little program book that everyone got when they entered, on the back it said you can do the scavenger hunt, and it had like pictures of the exhibitions you needed to find, and I'll send you a picture to put in as well of that program book. So kind of lured people in, like, okay, yeah, I can do this. And then the exercises ranged from being very easy, like for example, make a mirror selfie, to more difficult and like do a science experiment and being a bit more out of your comfort zone. Yeah, so I would keep it a mix of things that are easy to do versus things that are a bit more out of your comfort zone, but kind of start people off with something they already know, to make it more comfortable.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I see lately, I think it's a trend, which is personalization. I remember that we talked in the past, and you mentioned that in a Central Museum that you're experiencing or already having some personalization elements. Um, um, could you share a bit about what you're doing in that perspective?
Yeah, of course. I have to mention I'm not part of that project, but of course I can share a little bit about the project. So Central Museum was closed, or like the main collection was closed for about 3 years, 2 years, 3 years, something like that. And now they opened it, and reopened it with a lot of technology elements, which is really cool. And one of those is indeed personalization. So you can get a QR code or open it on your phone, and it's a browser app. So it's not an app that you need to download, but it's just on your browser. And it asks you a couple questions to make a personalized route for you. And how that works is it's not like a very complicated questionnaire. So it doesn't ask you things like, okay, do you like Baroque more than, I don't know, like another art style like Picasso or, Cubanism, whatever. So it's not terms that you need to know before coming in the museums. It's just like, do you like this picture more or do you like this picture more? Are you feeling happy? Are you feeling sad? So do you like, for example, I don't know if that's true, but it shows a picture of Van Gogh or a picture of Picasso, and you select a Picasso, and you don't have to know anything about Picasso. It's just what you prefer to look at, and then it just generates a route for you through the museum, taking you through artworks that fit your style, that fit your personal preferences.
Oh, that's smart. Because this way, I mean, I guess that for some visitors, the museum can be a maze, can be so big, and it's kind of hard to understand where to start, and you can get, at least in the big museums, can kind of get lost in some cases. So it's the fact that you can start with things that are more relevant for you or your preferences. I think it can be a great advantage. Um, do you know a little bit about the reactions? I know it's not the project that you're involved, but
Oh, I must say it launched very recently, so I
okay.
don't have any data available that tells me how it's being received. Um, I'm also not sure like how well it's being marketed right now, or if it's just like still a little bit in the background. Yeah, but I think talking in like about the younger generation where everything is being personalized from them, from like cookies and advertisements and even like brand experiences, I think is a very forward step for museums to get on board with personalization as well.
Yeah, and this is also marketing, exposing
For
it
sure.
here.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah.
As, look, so let's talk a little bit about Gen Z, because it's I think that your perspective is very unique and special because you're both working in museums, and you have the perspective as a professional in a museum, but also you're part of a younger generation. Uh, can you share a little bit about your perspective as Gen Z in museums, and what do you think that museums should consider to be more accessible for the younger generation?
Yeah, I think that's a very fun question because in a previous conversation we talked about it a little bit that me personally, I always loved museums, even as a little kid. My grandma would always take me to museums and it was like a very fun day out. And I remember being in primary school and, we would do a field trip or like a school excursion to a museum. And I was like, yay. And like my classmates were like, I want to go to the Efteling, which is like Disneyland of Netherlands. Like amusement parks and playgrounds. We don't want to go to a museum. That sounds boring. And I was very excited.
Your example was great because you said people, people from your own generation said it seems boring, uh, and
Yeah,
uh, and yeah, I guess the museums don't want to lose this generation.
no, for sure. I think in like the older generations are not disappearing, but they're leveling out their museum visits because they get older, so they're not going to museums as often as they used to before, right? And for the younger generation, they need to have a purpose to go to a museum, so they're not just going for a fun day out. They want to see something there that they want to see. So if I go to the Rijksmuseum, I want to see the Night Watch. I know it's there, so I want to see it. I think that to yeah, maybe now is a good time for the Louvre example. So when I went to the Louvre, we talked about it before. I was there with my boyfriend, and we were walking around, and we were at the Mona Lisa, as you do, because if you can go to the Louvre, you want to see the Mona Lisa. And before us was this kid standing with his Nintendo. And I was like, oh, kids these days, they can't even appreciate art. They're just like, being dragged with their parents to a museum, and they are going on their Game Boy, Nintendo stuff. And then I looked closer, and I looked at the screen, and it was a picture of the Mona Lisa, and he was like playing a game with it. And I was like, wait, is this part of the Louvre? Is this something they do? And it looked really cool, and it was really immersed and like looking up to the Mona Lisa and looking down and doing something. And I don't know what it was, but it looked really cool. And then we went back to like the main hall of the Louvre, and I saw that they were handing out these Nintendos to the kids, and I was like, oh, that's amazing, because every kid plays Nintendo, or at least if they don't have a Nintendo, they have a friend who has a Nintendo, or a friend of a friend who has a Nintendo, so they know how it works. And they became so immersed, and I was like, oh my God, that's so brilliant. I know not every museum has the financial means to just be handing out Nintendos and to make the software and to be programming and, buy 1,000 Nintendos. But for the Louvre being such a big, overwhelming museum for kids, especially, but also for Gen Z, because I'm overwhelmed by the Louvre. It's so big, and there's so much to do, to see. So I thought that was really great. And I think those are the examples that museums should follow. Like, okay, look at the generation. What do they already know? Like, my generation is, I think, the smartphone generation. I think everyone owns a smartphone. We all like Instagram. We all like TikTok. I know Nemo is doing really fun TikTok stuff. They do a lot of experiments on TikTok. I think that's great to attract a new generation. Personalized routes are really great. Also being able to kind of make something. I think the Foam, the photography museum in the Netherlands, have these little like booklets you can make where you flick through, and it's almost like a movie. You know those? Like, it's picture, but it's very small adjustments. So when you flick through it, it's like a movie, and you can make it yourself with pictures of yourself. So it's something tangible that you take home with you as like a souvenir. But it's from yourself, and I think, yeah, well, most people are self-centered for like my generation, selfie generation. There are museums catered towards making selfies, like the Wonder Museum.
Oh,
It's just like a couple of exhibitions, and every exhibition is like, there's one that's like a giant pink ball pit, and you go in it, and there's a camera above you from the ceiling hanging, and it takes a picture, and you post that picture on Instagram and be like, yeah, I went to the Wonder Museum. Is it a museum though? I'm not sure. It's more like an experience, but they call it themselves a museum. Yeah, so things like that are what apparently attracting young people. I was in the Belvedere in Vienna, Klimt, and you could purchase a piece of Klimt using NFTs. So you had Klimt, and right next to it was a screen, and it had divided Klimt Klimt in like thousands of little blocks, little pieces, little cubes, little squares, and you could purchase that using NFT technology, using blockchain technology, and it would be like added to your digital wallet, and you could own a piece of Klimt, and you would get updates. If they were, I don't know, making, doing any maintenance on Klimt, and they would, I don't know, do something to your little cube, your little square, you would get an update like, oh, your square is being cleaned right now. So you
that's very innovative.
That's very innovative and very expensive. Very high technology. But that's, I don't know, that's kind of like in line with young people, because I don't own NFTs, but I've experienced it with cryptocurrency, and a lot of people in my environment have experienced cryptocurrency, even if it's €1, just to see what happens. So I think those are very fun examples of what museums are doing to attract young people, or at least be kind of in the same environment as them.
Yeah, it sounds like there's more than a few experiments, or more than a few projects that are that are thinking how to engage the younger generation, and be adapted to the young generation. And I guess that one of the questions professionals are as yourself are asking, what's the balance? I mean, which I guess it's the big question. I mean, on the one end, you want to move forward and to be relevant. It's crucial to be relevant and stay engaging for the next generation, the digital generation. People are already on their phones. It's very hard to disconnect. And so you can leverage that to engage them better. But on the other hand, I guess people trying to understand what's the balance, what's the right balance. Do you have any thoughts about that?
I think that's a very, very fair question. Because, you know, from my perspective, I really love technology. It's what I'm being educated for. It's what I'm doing. So maybe I'm the person that can go a little bit like across that balance, like across that line. But I think market research is very important for museums to perform regarding their own situation. So there are museums like Next Museum in Amsterdam, which is like about technology. So it makes sense for them to employ more technology than other museums. For Central Museum, they also are doing more with technology, and also the exhibitions. They have a couple of exhibitions that focus around like AI, for example, with art. So to find that balance, I think it's going to be the next couple of years are going to be a bit of trial and error for a lot of museums, which is a very costly business because, you know, if it errors, it's not so nice. Yeah. So how do you do that? I'm not so sure. I think for the scavenger hunt, the purpose was to try something to kind of dabble in it and see how it works and how it's if it's well received or not. So instead of, you know, we could also do like a virtual reality scavenger hunt where you're wearing glasses and you're in one spot and you're walking using joysticks and it's the same experience, but it's fully digital. I think that's what you want to not do. So what you want to refrain of, because the idea is that it adds a layer to your current experience, but it should not take away from your current experience, if that makes sense. So, for example, with the Mona Lisa example, I think he was very immersed in his Nintendo, but he was also looking up because I don't know what he had to do. Maybe he had to find something, or so. Yeah, it should add a layer to it. It should not take away from the experience, I think.
It needs to be as part of the environment, as the reason for them to explore the museum or to get
Yeah, it should make sense for the
curious.
exhibition. Yeah, it should make sense for the exhibition that it's supposed to, like, for example, if it's like an archaeological site, what I would find really cool is that if I can take my phone and, you know, use my camera and like go through it and, like, I don't know, maybe scroll back in time. Maybe I can see
Mm-hmm.
ruins now. Maybe if I can scroll back on time on my phone and I can see, okay, this is what it looks like 1,000 years ago. This is what it looks like 2,000 years ago. Then it adds to my experience, but I'm still looking at the original archaeological site, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it comes alive. You're in the same location as it was, but
Yeah.
because it's now ruined, it comes alive, and and you understand better what you're seeing because you might see a few stones that were left from the marvelous building that
Yeah, for sure. When I was in Cairo, I went to the Egyptian museum and they just renovated it like this year. So I was in the old museum and you are looking at like these extremely cool artifacts, right? These are like insane, but they are so old. It's like this little piece of like an old vase. You're like, yeah, wow, it's just a, I don't know, a shard of a vase. I don't know what it's supposed to look like. I don't like whatever. But if maybe I could like use my phone, or maybe there would be like a screen next to it that like and shows how it's supposed to look like a 3D model or something. Uh, that would make my experience. It would enhance my experience without taking away from it.
definitely. Um, as a closing note from you, Um, uh, how do you see the museum industry evolve in the next, let's say, 5 years,
Oh,
10
that's a
years
tough
from
question.
now?
Yeah, well, that's a tough question because that depends if you ask like in the Netherlands, international, global, that's a
In
very
the
difficult.
Netherlands.
In the Netherlands, yeah.
So let's,
Um, well, politically, it's a bit difficult because like the right parties that are very popular right now, they are like they, scratch all the culture subsidies and money and let the general public pay for it. If the general public would be in charge of paying for it, then the ticket prices would skyrocket, which means that maybe it's the same price as a concert ticket. Who is going to pay 80 euros to visit the museum? I don't know, not me. So I think those are the developments that in the next 5 years we are going to see how that is going to work out. Because less funding means less projects, and less projects means focusing on what's needed. So what's needed is new art, is new exhibitions. Then technology becomes like, second place, third place, maybe even fourth place. But I think if in a world with all the funding possible, which would be nice, I think more museums are going to do something with personalization for sure. So not like personalized routes, but also um, TikTok ads and stuff. Um, I know Rijksmuseum is doing a lot with that.
I guess that one of the possibilities, talking about funding, that technology, I guess one of the questions, if technology can increase the experience and people, and then it becomes more competitive to other types of experiences. So maybe people would be willing to pay more about combined experience, both in the museum and also technological experience.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I think there are people who value that aspect a lot, but I also think there are people that are just like, okay, yeah, if I'm going and it's there, it's nice. But if it's not there, it's not like necessarily the reason why people are going is a personalized route, it's just that it adds to the factor of them having a good time while being there.
Yeah. I
But
guess it also depends on the price sensitivity eventually.
Yeah, for sure. But
How
I
much
do,
will they be willing to pay?
yeah. Yeah, and you can also, there are museums that have an audio guide that you need to pay for, and there are museums that have audio guides that are free to use, and you need to find a balance in that. So, for example, the same could be said with, having a personalized route. Are you going to charge for that? I don't think so. It doesn't make sense to charge for it, even though it costs a lot of money to make it. So, are you going to put it in the price of the ticket and, kind of hide it in there? It's difficult to determine what's the best course of action. But I think in the next 5 years, the museums that are standing still and not doing anything are going to fall behind eventually.
So thank you very much, Danique. I really enjoyed the conversation with you. I think your
Thank you.
perspective is very unique, and the fact that you shared your knowledge with us today. A big thank you to everyone listening and watching us. I hope you got some great ideas of how to make both the museums and heritage sites more exciting with technology. Please subscribe us, leave a review, and tell your friends about our podcast. So join us next time for more interesting talks, and saying goodbye until our next episode. Take care. Thank you.